And after wrapping up his visit to Russia, Prime Minister Modi would be embarking on the second leg of his visit, and that is to Austria. And ahead of the visit, the Austrian ambassador to India, Katharina Wieser, spoke to DD India senior correspondent Amritpal Singh on the importance of the Prime Minister's visit to the Central European country. Take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in the Austrian capital Vienna on Tuesday evening for a bilateral visit. It is an important visit to a Central European country because this visit comes after 41 years that an Indian Prime Minister visits Austria. To talk more about that visit, I have with me the Austrian Ambassador to India, Katharina Wieser. Thank you, Ambassador Wieser, for speaking to us. How important is this visit and why is this visit so important?
Thank you for inviting me. And yes, you're right, this is really a very important visit for us. It is the first visit of an Indian Prime Minister, as you mentioned, after 41 years to Austria, 40 years after an Austrian Federal Chancellor visited India. And this visit is taking place in a year when we are celebrating 75 years of bilateral relations. So we are happy about that fact also, that this high-level visit is now sort of a manifestation of the very good place that we are in at the level of our bilateral relations.
How close are the political relations between the two countries, Ambassador?
I think we can really say that we have an excellent and long-standing good relationship. So all through these 75 years, there have never been really bad phases that we had to overcome. We've had a very steady and long-lasting good relationship with each other, but I think we can say that in the past years there has been a special dynamic in our relationship. Also at the political level, there have been several political meetings between our foreign ministers in particular. They have met 7-8 times over the past 2 years. They've established a very good working relationship with each other. Last year, 2 years ago, the speakers of both houses of Austrian Parliament came to visit India. The Austrian Minister of Labour and Economy came and visited this year for a whole week. And also Prime Minister Modi actually met our foreign minister when he briefly was Chancellor of the Republic of Austria in Glasgow in the margins of one of the COP meetings. So in the past years at the political level also there have been many, many visits. Minister Jaishankar came to Vienna at the beginning of last year, also after a long period, I think of 27 years when no Indian foreign minister had visited Austria.
Excellency, if we talk about the economic relations between the two countries, the bilateral trade last year was close to about $3 billion US dollars. Do you see more potential for increasing this and increased bilateral cooperation, economic cooperation, and would that figure in the talks between the two leaders?
Absolutely. So our bilateral economic and business relationship is a very important central part of our bilateral relationship. We have been improving that also over the past years. There's more interest, not only from Austrian companies, but also from other companies. There's a more international focus and interest also in what is happening in India. And also from Austrian company side, obviously, we have 150 Austrian, so subsidiaries of Austrian companies in India. Austria is well known as a high-tech country, so that is what we do. We are very, very good in that sector, and that is also central to our business engagement in India. So we are very much into high-tech machinery and tools. Many of our companies are invested in infrastructure development. You will find Austrian companies everywhere, whether it's the railway sector or water power sector or smart cities development or automotive sector, for example.
Ambassador, when the Austrian Labour Minister was here this February, there was an understanding on a startup bridge which has been talked for a very long time. This time when the Prime Minister meets the CEOs at the Business Forum, there are a sizable number of CEOs from the startups as well participating. So where is that partnership going?
Startups is sort of, in everybody's mouth nowadays. You are right, bilateral startup bridge was launched in the presence of the Austrian Minister of Labour and Economy when he came to visit India in February. But even before that, startup cooperation had been going on. There were 5 startup missions going both ways. Austria is a very important startup ecosystem, a startup ecosystem. I think there are nearly 4,000 startups in Austria, and we're trying at the regulatory level also to do a lot to promote startups. India, as we know, is also a very good startup ecosystem. So obviously it was logical that we would try and cooperate more at that level. We think innovation is important to meet the challenges of the future. So I think both of our countries are putting a focus on startups, so the bilateral startup bridge gave that another boost. And we have seen just recently a number, nearly 30 Indian young startuppers participating at the Vienna Up, which is a yearly Vienna startup festival. So that was already, maybe one could say that was also an outcome of the visit of our Minister of Economy and the launching of the bilateral startup bridge.
India's got a lot of skilled manpower when it comes to technology, when it comes to IT. Could we see, in the coming days, years, months, more migration mobility movement when it comes to skilled manpower?
Skilled labor migration is something we need, Europe needs, and that India has to offer. So last year, as you mentioned, we signed Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement. It entered into force at the beginning of September. It was done very quickly, also with sort of some political push behind it, and this is now an excellent foundation also to improve skilled labor migration to Europe. So it is definitely something we as Austria and Austrian companies, businesses are also looking at. And there's a huge talent pool in India that we are looking at. And how to operationalize, implement this agreement will, I am sure, be one of the important parts of the conversations between our 2 prime ministers. The migration, it's called Migration and Mobility Agreement. So there are actually 2 parts to this agreement. One part of the agreement is to deal with the issue of illegal migration that we do not want and do not support, and it has a few regulations on how we can deal with this problem together. And then on the other hand, it has all of the good migration possibilities that we do want to support. So the possibilities of student exchange, exchange of academics, researchers, and also business, making it easier for businesses to exchange laborers and to attract skilled labor migration.
Prime Minister Modi comes to Vienna from Moscow, where he, clearly conveyed to the Russian side that the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia cannot be resolved on the battleground, but across the table. Could this figure in the talks between the Indian and the Austrian leadership? And do you see the 2 countries being on the same page when it comes to resolution of the conflict? I'm
sure we are on the same page insofar as we definitely are of the opinion that this terrible war is more than a conflict. It's a war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. This war has to stop as soon as possible. And we need to find a peaceful resolution which is in line with international law and the UN Charter. So I think we have the same goal, we have the same wish. This war needs to stop as soon as possible, and there's in particular one person who could stop this war. What happened yesterday, what we saw, the attacks on Ukrainian hospitals was really terrifying and quite terrible, and it is certainly against humanitarian law. And we are quite shocked about this. And I think, yes, it will be interesting for the 2 prime ministers to talk about this war also, and how one hopefully can find pathways out of this war and towards a peaceful resolution of this terrible situation. So it will be interesting for them to talk about this also.
So clearly the Ukrainian conflict could could figure in the talks between the Indian and the Austrian leadership during this landmark visit, but this visit would be primarily focused on taking the bilateral relations to the next level. Ambassador Katharina Wieser, thank you very much for speaking to us.